Pictures.
This is going live.
Yeah, we
live.
Okay, I will call to order this regular monthly meeting of the Village of Trumansburg Board of Trustees. Trustee Hannon is probably in the parking lot at this point. Everyone else is present. We don't need to talk about the
Did you get a response?
pretty good indication we're not going to get.
I think so.
Maybe I will talk.
Okay.
Okay. Item number 2, are there any changes, additions, or deletions to the agenda? None from me. Good. Okay. Item number 3, then we have draft minutes in the Dropbox from our February 10th meeting.
I actually made some last minute changes after Trustee Carver read them. So I added, there was a change at the time. The time was at 7 instead of 5:35. And then I added that first line, the blurb, just that to acknowledge that we had met with at the beginning.
Okay, so we have some amended minutes. If someone would like to move these.
I move that we approve the minutes as presented.
Motion. Second. There's a second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Item number 4 on the agenda is our public hearing for draft local law 2 of 2020, which is our tax cap override law.
Good Lord. This went from a little paragraph to being a big.
Yeah, it's evolved over time.
Okay.
So I would entertain a motion to go to open our public hearing on draft local law 2 of 2020.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are now within our public hearing for local law 2 of 2020, which I will very, very briefly read. The only part that really matters is that it is the purpose and intent of this local law to allow, if determined necessary and or appropriate, for the Board of Trustees of the Village of Trumansburg to adopt a budget for the fiscal year commencing in 2020 that requires a real property tax levy that is in excess of the tax levy limit as defined by General Municipal Law, Section 3C. That limit, by the way, for villages this year is 1.78%. Is there any comment from anyone here on proposed local law 2 of 2020? Going once. This is how we get back on schedule. Going twice.
Well played.
Then I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing on proposed local law 2 of 2020.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
I would then move that we adopt proposed local law 2 of 2020.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Becoming a familiar routine with the budget process. I'm sort of excited that maybe this year we won't need it, or at least we'll be closer than at least in my tenure.
Closer than some years. Yeah. Then if there's no additional comment, I would, we don't need a roll call vote, do we? You want?
Nope.
All in favor of adopting local law 2 of 2020, our tax cap override, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Item number 5 is our second public hearing of the evening on proposed local law 3 of 2020, which is a relatively minor amendment of our local vehicle and traffic law. And I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing on local law 3 of 2020.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The relevant changes to our vehicle and traffic law are specifically that we will be designating, we had designated the first 2 spots to the left of the Little Venice, what I call the Little Venice driveway in between the liquor store and the Masonic Temple. The first 2 spots in as 15-minute parking. We had some feedback on it afterwards, so we're now simply going to move everything 1 spot over. So we'll have a 15-minute only parking in front of the liquor store, and then a 15-minute only parking on the other side of that driveway. So the first spots on either side of that driveway in between the 2 buildings will be 15-minute only if this amendment is adopted. So we are within our public hearing for this local law, if anyone would like to comment. Yeah.
So on either side of that driveway there, you said, so that'll make it easier for people to come in and out.
There's a couple of different reasons for the initial change and to keep it this way is there's a lot of truck loading in that area during the day. So we'll sometimes get a Cisco tractor trailer will double park in the middle of the lane. That's less than ideal. Or they will take a left onto Elm and stop. That's also not great. I also have had quite a few people ask about the ability to drop off and pick up elderly, handicapped or disabled folks, anyone in bad weather. So having spots available for that is part of the hope of this. And then as well, a convenient place for people to run in and pick up their to-go order from Little Venice or whatnot.
So that'll be 24 hours.
7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 15-minute only. Currently, the signs say truck loading zone, and we're going to get the green 15-minute parking only sign so that people don't think it's only for trucks. That was a little bit confusing with the truck loading zone signs. But yeah, so parking spaces are a bit of a moving target, but we're going to try this. Any other comments or questions? Going twice. Then I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing on local law 3 of 2020.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
If there's no additional discussion, I would entertain, we can still discuss it, I would entertain a motion to adopt local law 3 of 2020.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion from the board? If not, then all in favor of adopting local law 3 of 2020, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, 2 for 2. Item number 6 on the agenda is Trumansburg Farmers Market budget, etc. presentation.
I'm gonna be doing the presentation, Maggie Salvato.
Sure.
Talking about how we wanna increase the, stipend for our market manager to $10,000. They're asked to return with some projected revenue numbers for you and a business plan idea to help increase our revenue numbers to help reduce some of that stipend burden from the village. Ben, I'm not sure if you shared the.
I did, but late, unfortunately. It is in the Dropbox for people that want to take a look at it.
Okay, so if you want to pull up the 3-year projected numbers from the Dropbox, I can explain to you basically what we did. We identified basically 3 areas where we could increase revenue over the next 3 years. One of them being increasing the space rental fee, both for day vendors and pavilion spaces, by 10%, and after 3 years, this will definitely more closely align us with other markets in the area. Another area we want to generate revenue is through a market membership program that we offer to community members who are interested in being a part of the market. They can make a financial contribution, become a member, and we'll have tiered levels of support with minor amounts of swag. So that should increase revenue over the course of the next 3 years. And then we want to also start a day of market sponsorship program to allow local businesses, vendors, as well as community members want to step up to sponsor the whole day of market, which would involve some on-site advertising as well as advertising through our social media channels. And they can include or not include the music sponsorship as part of that. We don't anticipate large revenue numbers from these two sponsorship and membership programs this year, so we didn't add those numbers into this year's budget, but we fully intend to start piloting those programs this year. So hopefully we get revenue even this year from those programs, and these numbers are more in our favor as the years go on. But because we have a new manager who is learning the ropes this year, and we're hoping to have her get up to speed and do the marketing plan that the board has been trying to have in place the past few years, but because of our market manager hasn't lived up to our expectations, we haven't done the full marketing of the market that we want to. So having a new manager who has more time devoted to our original marketing campaign, we're hoping that grows the numbers of community members just coming to the market, which will help increase revenue for the vendors in the town. But as you can see, our the line item that we have as the village market operation contribution, this year, the number for our full contribution would be $10,230, while next year, if our projections of getting 10 market days sponsored and 25 community members to become members of the market, next year we should need to ask for only $6,390 from the village, and then the following year, $3,655, and it'll continue to decrease. We're hoping that we get more than 10 market-based sponsors in the season, but we're trying to be conservative. But the continued increase in revenue from the sponsorship and membership programs should continue to increase the amount of contribution we ask from the village. And we also are moving forward on trying to become an independent nonprofit. And have more questions for you about the lawyer services that you mentioned you might be able to offer as a board for our research going forward on that.
Okay.
Any questions?
Let's see this.
Everything that's been the one that Jill had given me. I didn't know anything about this.
Oh, no, what's in there?
What's in there? Their ASCAP, the nice say, or yeah, their nice say bills, advertising.
We have market insurance.
Yeah, that's a different budget line
Oh.
than the contractual.
Does that include
Anything they
pass through of the
purchase.
tourism grant? Pass through on the grant money? Any grant money?
Yeah, that would pass through that too.
And I should.
But I don't know, and the discussion that I had with Jill was, you guys weren't gonna apply for any grants this year.
That is correct.
But I thought that was part of the increase for the farmer's market manager from the first thing that was going to be part of the increase was they would have to look for grants.
Yeah, I don't personally know a ton about grants, we do have one person on the board who does, she used to be a grant writer, and my understanding, sort of our board's understanding now, is that grants are usually for things like, and this improvement or that improvement, not really to support a market manager's salary. So it's just, or operating expenses, it's not a place where we can expect to go to find money.
For her salary.
Yeah.
So is it gonna be this line then?
I can't see that. Not Gordon, I'm sorry.
Come on.
You're not.
So they want 10,000 for the market managers, stipend work,
Just right here.
right?
Might be high risk.
So is,
Low risk.
so I'm looking at three lines
gradient.
in the existing budget. That comes up to a whole lot more than 10,000. These three are all farmers market.
What are you guys looking at right now?
Because Jill had submitted a budget to us back when we had requested it. This is all different.
Wait, that's not what she asked.
Oh, okay, I don't know which.
We're looking at our village budget lines,
Okay.
which break out what, because we're in our budget cycle that we're gonna actually talk about more later. So I'm just trying to get a sense of how this proposal relates to what is plugged into our budget already,
Okay.
which is a
Since Jill
little
gave,
bit of apples to potatoes here.
right, 'cause since Jill gave those numbers to Vicky, we've also taken some time to do an audit of our expenses. And so, this projection that we worked up and forwarded to them has some adjusted expenses down below that won't be reflected in what Jill gave Vicky. So, it is apples to potatoes.
Any comments or questions from the board while I'm staring at these numbers?
I think it looks great. Thanks for putting that together. I think, at least for me, that's exactly what I was hoping to see. It's really,
Yeah,
yeah. that was-
I think I understand that. Now we have to tie it back to the budget because doesn't tie it all.
Yeah, I
The
apologize.
budget
We're all
is-
sort of
the
absorbed
budget's
in this
overstated.
secondary.
The budget is definitely overstated.
Yeah. Anything else?
My one question, I guess, well, there's kind of two, one around both around the nonprofit status side of things. This is something I just kind of thought of now is the market's ability to, well, I guess you already have sponsorships, so that's kind of all the same thing. That's fine. So then I think, I know in going back and forth, there was a question in general. We had at one point mentioned potentially engaging Guy or having Guy assist in some manner in helping the market board kind of figure out steps towards nonprofit. And if that would be something that this board would be open to doing out of kind of the general fund balance, or would we want to add that into the farmer's market line? And how we want to kind of think about that. So that was a conversation I know we wanted to kind of have here and see where people fell on that. Maybe that's part of the larger conversation here of getting this all wrapped up actually into our budget.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I do appreciate your efforts in putting together the pro forma. This is an excellent start. I do have one question about, year over year revenue doesn't change. We're just shifting the village's contribution to others.
Well, that revenue actually does, let's see. Now, I can't remember exactly what we did. He's saying how this doesn't actually change. Because I'm not out of this part. I remember it was 0. So this saying.
Right.
Regulations, but it actually does.
We changed the amount of the village market operation contribution so that the total revenue line matches our total expense line. That's at the bottom, which is 16,790, and as we adjust our expenses, we will use the village market contribution to zero out our budget. Is that?
I see that-
Does that answer your question?
No.
No.
I see that that's what's happening. My question is, when the revenue stays the same year over year in total, but the village's contribution is decreasing, that must mean then, or has to mean, or does mean, that other revenue lines are increasing.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah,
However, there isn't, is there any, and this is not in any way a criticism of this, it's a broader question. Has there been any discussion, or is there any effort to growing overall total revenue? If, for instance, the village were to say at some point, 5,000 is a good number, we don't need to decrease it anymore, then would there be any effort made somehow or through other means to actually grow that total revenue line over time in total?
Well, this is only a 3-year out projection, right? I think we were actually asked for 5 from you guys, like sort of a 5-year plan. We figured 3 years was more realistic. But those two things that we're incorporating as revenue, day of market sponsorship and market memberships,
Mhm.
we only do it to 3 years. In the 4th and 5th year, we're assuming that they'll grow, so that will be an increase in revenue.
Well, it seems similarly, if we were to say, to take that $5,000 number, in year 2 or 3, whatever that, where you have projected for us to provide 3,655, that additional amount, the extra 1,400 or so in there would increase the total revenue if we were to stay at that level. It seems like.
Right, it's always been our mission as a board, I believe, to just zero out our budget and not try to generate revenue year over year increase.
And if we did, if we really started to not needing money from you and we were generating revenue, my job is to put it in my community so that she can make a little bit more and do a little more work.
Yeah, Joe.
Can you say that differently?
Which part?
I'm not ready to say it. Did I hear you right? You said the revenue stays, no, you said at the bottom line stays?
So if the revenue is, if you're projecting the revenue to stay at 16,700, and the village's contribution is declining, then you're making up the difference somewhere else. My question is there a thought, or has there been any discussion, particularly if you pursue not-for-profit status, of having a target 3, 4, 5 years out and saying, we want this revenue line, forget what our expenses are going to be. We want this revenue line to be X, 20,000, 25,000, 30,000, whether that's through grant applications, whether it's through advertising, whether it's through other ideas that you come up with. The market day up membership, I think, is a great idea. Anything creative that you come up with the idea being that if a not-for-profit or a subset of the village, whichever the farmer's market is, generates more revenue than it has expenses, that can only help
Right. That's
in some way, either to pay a market manager more or to spend more money on things like advertising, rather than, and again, I don't want this to sound like a criticism, that when you put together zero-sum budgets, starting with the expense side, you're always going to eventually run into some situation somewhere where there's an unexpected expense for which you have no plan.
And that's already happened.
And that has happened, right?
Like the toilet.
And so whether it's a municipality or a corporation or a not-for-profit corporation, this idea of having reserves on hand is always a good
That's.
way to try to
Yeah,
approach
I'm
it.
glad you brought it up, because that was my question as to if the market were to make more than it uses in a year, can it carry that over? And maybe that's what the municipality calls the reserve.
Yes, I mean, it can carry it over. Under the current structure, it can carry it over if the village allows it.
So that-
As a not-for-profit, you
Right,
decide
those
what's
are
it.
two different things. The not-for-profit would not be the village.
Right.
So, I mean,
One of many advantages of being a not-for-profit is that as a self-contained entity, now you get to have decision-making over those budget processes and what's our revenue target and do we want to have reserves on hand. It is, it does put more of a responsibility and a burden on you all because now you're managing money. That is at least in part, if the village is contributing, is at least in part taxpayer money. But long-term, it provides for more flexibility, more potential, I guess would be a better word than flexibility.
right, more potential as revenue side, where it can be accessed.
Right. More potential for the organization. Because now not only are you not 100%, not only are you extremely reliant on the village, but you actually don't have a say if you generate more revenue, which would be good for the market, but that money stays with the village. So there's,
That was one of my questions. I didn't ask it of you. I know I had that discussion with what happened with the market. When would we ask that? Like, when would we be able to, say this year we go, we do really well, and we sell a lot of these things. Do we actually have a surplus? When would we talk to you about that?
as soon as possible. So, I mean, as soon as the season is over and you realize that there's $5,000 more than you'd expected, then we would want to be thinking about how to preserve that. Bearing in mind that you have no guarantee that we will, but that would at least give us more flexibility. Again, the nice thing about, and this really isn't your headache. One of the things we sometimes deal with here is we can't bind the future action of a future board who might think very differently than we do. And so another advantage of farmers market being its own self-contained entity is if you run into someone somewhere or some multiple ones somewhere who don't feel the way we do about the farmers market, you'll have some insulation against that. Anything else?
I had a question just about the kind of raising the cost of the rentals, which makes a lot of sense. I'm just curious was there any conversation with kind of some of your more loyal patrons in terms of like, is that a deal breaker for them? Are they pretty flexible with return in terms of cost increasing?
We recently had a vendor come in to one of our meetings.
Okay.
She talked about our fees being significantly less than other markets.
Oh, great. Okay.
And just through our anecdotal research, our market is quite a deal for the vendors.
Okay.
At this point, and it hasn't considered that we know of. We're getting applications at the
Great.
And it might, maybe there's some growing things there, but I think it's asset.
Yeah.
It's reasonable.
Okay. Yeah, I admittedly am rather ignorant with regards to the going rate farmer market booths.
being less than $10 a day
Bless
for the building and space.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
So it's a little bit more.
I don't gather your I don't know how much you're looking for ideas, but You know, I know one issue that has been raised, one thing that hurting farmers markets is more people are, you know, buying into CSAs and kind of going straight to farms and getting their stuff. Is there any opportunity, you think, for the market to work with local farms to be a pickup destination, to bring people to the market to pick up their share? Or do people want to go to the farms? I mean, some people want to go to the farms to pick. It's a great way for me to let my kids loose for an hour, but some people might like the opportunity to at least have that as a secondary. Some farms I know offer like a secondary option where if you can't come to the farm during the standard pickup hours, maybe you can pick up at the T-Burg Farmers Market.
Yeah. Honestly, I only know it from, I used to run school land, so I know it from that perspective, but I don't actually know. Maybe
It's like some tribe or whatever. But I think the produce vendors on site discourage it regularly when
Okay.
it's brought up at the meetings.
That might make
because they
sense.
feel it might impact their produce sales. And while I don't know, if I've been somewhere or the other of that, like you say, a long time vendors are sort of the best
Sure.
market.
Yeah, that makes sense. They're not going to pick up produce if they just have a package waiting for them.
Right, so we're not sure exactly how to.
One other crazy idea was becoming a member. So it looks like you're thinking about memberships. But becoming a member and somehow being able to kind of show up on the spot and use all the various vendors to build your own CSA. But I have no idea how you would, how people would pay into that varying cost. Yeah,
I mean, to me, it sounds like that would be for the vendors in some way providing some deal.
yeah.
You know, and we already feel like we're asking them.
All right.
We did toss that around.
That's it.
The day,
That's all I got.
the membership, the community memberships will be, they'll be tiered. So we're gonna offer like a low tier, average, and a high tier. So hopefully, that'll provide a way to provide. I love the idea of how it makes it feel like, it already feels like a community, farming market. But I think that might just make people really kind of step up and feel that when they buy a membership.
Great. That's all my crazy ideas. We might have a food truck idea for you.
Yeah, Jim.
Different issue.
One of the things that I forgot, mostly because I get quite nervous in public speaking, was, we had talked about talking to the county for sponsorship. So looking into that, nobody's actually asked them, but that was one of the things that we had talked about. Because the county and the town, that's what it is, that's why. But I know, I'm like, wait, I just talked to Nancy like a few months ago. So that's what made me remember it after sitting there for 40 minutes. I can speak to the, maybe, I don't know if there's time now, but I did bring that information back to the board and say we could approach the town of Ulysses for some sponsorship as well, and then we share some of that, and then with the red and run it from the market.
Sure. Yeah, again, all of the above is usually a good approach for these kinds of things. As a not-for-profit, and I'm trying not to beat a dead horse right now, but as a not-for-profit, it's a lot easier to reach out to multiple agencies and organizations than as a village entity, pseudo-village entity, asking another municipality for support. But overall, I think this is great. I appreciate the effort and thank you for bringing it. I don't see the net bottom line difference is about $1,574 more as presented. So that's not a giant number. As far as the legal goes, if we do offer that assistance, we can pull it from general. I'm not 100% sure that Guy is the way to go on that. I would certainly ask his opinion. But Cornell Cooperative Extension could be a big help. There's also one or two attorneys locally who live in the community and have kids that go to Trumansburg schools, who have themselves established not-for-profits in the last few years, or assisted others in doing it. So I might ask them before I mention them publicly. I might ask them if they're interested in doing some more, since they do have annual pro bono requirements. But yeah, some combination of that, either local help or give Guy another reason to add another line to his invoices.
And should we just go through them and talk about that?
Yes, please. Anything else from the board on farmers market related?
I'll just say at the end of this, I'm really excited about this. I feel like when I first joined the board, there was next to no conversation between our boards. And I think in a short period of time, we've kind of turned that around into something I'm really excited about, to see the farmers market kind of continue to grow and flourish and strive into its own, come into its own even more. So I'm really excited. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Item number 7 is public comment period number 1, privilege of the floor. If anyone wants to say anything about
Right on
anything
time.
we haven't already said anything about. Bit of a disturbing.
Let the ladies loose.
Not all.
Not all of them, just these two.
Okay, then we will move right along to reports from representatives. Answer your hand, whichever of you would like to go first.
Just regarding the farmers market, like I said, so I gave them a card of our tourism director. And we have close to $3 million room tax that we award yearly. But I don't know if not being a nonprofit is going to hinder you. I don't know if the farmers market gets any money. So I would just call that person and see.
In the past, there's been some tourism grant money that's gone through to the farmers market for advertising, typically outside the county.
Right.
So then we have opportunities.
Yeah, so I don't know because you're part of the municipality. But anyway, I wouldn't ask just because of that, but I would just check if there's anything you might be eligible for, because I was advised for Jacksonville Park, we believe we're eligible for some stuff that we didn't think we were under tourism. So, great, thank you. Yep. Good luck. Let's see, speaking of tourism awards, you might notice the Trumansburg Conservatory received $6,150 from that fund. Next, the Tompkins County Agricultural Summit is on March 20th. And so you can go on the Cornell Cooperative Extension website. Some of the topics we're going to talk about this year are the challenges with growing and processing hemp and CBD oil and solar leasing. The conference center that I brought that up before, that the city is considering having a conference center built into one floor of a larger project that's going to be possibly some shops, but mostly affordable housing. And so we're still negotiating back and forth with them. And I'm going to meet Wednesday night along with the chamber, just give them an upgrade and see how they're feeling. Right now, the city's proposal that we're trying to negotiate with them is that we actually use part of our tourism money, which is originally slated for things like conference centers. So we're going to go and check with the chamber, see how they feel about that. So this is the city's resolution. We haven't drawn ours up yet. Would be 4% of our tourism money that will be allocated for the conference center if it needs it. And then the last topic is the Corona coronavirus. And we had a press conference today, the county did. And then later at 4:00, we had a municipal conference call. I don't know if people had a chance to call in on that, or if you had any other questions or concerns.
I don't. If anyone else has questions, please feel free.
What was put out on the Spectrum channel, is that available to see other places? Has it been taped and put on YouTube?
I don't know that it was put up on Spectrum.
I don't, if somebody saw, a friend of mine saw it, like, you must have had
We had right, there was a lot of media there, there was a press conference there too. I don't have cable TV, so I
Yeah,
don't know the places that it was.
There'll be a link to that in the county's website.
and it will be.
It is not yet,
It's not, yeah, it's not.
Did they say that? I wasn't able to get in on the phone call, it was actually filled up, I wasn't able to get into it for half an hour.
Yeah, there was a taping of the press conference, and the county said they would put it on their website.
I checked for it this afternoon.
Okay,
That's it.
that's within the day.
Sure.
Yeah, so we still have no confirmed cases, but there are many people in quarantine.
Okay.
And, last I forgot, Sandy, I think had asked last time about bags, about reusable bags. And because of the plastic bag ban going into effect, and they ran out of bags that were bought. So we're supposed to get money back each time someone buys a paper bag. That 5 cents goes to the state, and we get, I can't remember, 2 or 3 cents of that to be able to buy more bags. So that's what so I wish it was sooner, and so at some point we'll get that money, and then we'll be able to supply the bags. And the other option is if municipalities want to chip in, we get another bulk rate, but I haven't heard anybody really interested in that, but we are.
Any questions for Ann?
I just checked the health department and the link is up now, Jill.
Oh, thanks.
I've seen some in the community wondering if the state would consider pushing out the bag ban in light of the virus concerns because of people bringing reusable bags into the stores and what kind of issues that could cause. Is that any kind of a serious concern from the county's perspective or the health department's perspective?
Yeah, I've read some articles, Facebook posts about that too. We haven't talked about it. As far as I'm personally concerned, it's, if you're concerned or you have somebody in your house infected, or for this short period, hopefully short period, a month or two, that would you pay the 5 cents, for new bags, or would you, if you have cloth bags, I put mine through the wash. If they're like plastic lined, you can clean those. But I can bring it up, but I doubt there will be any.
But they're not like recommending that people have to clean those bags before they take them to the store. I mean, I guess it doesn't sound like it doesn't sound like there's a huge concern that people would transmit virus through reusable bags, I guess is what I'm wondering.
Well, we did discuss when we originally talked about, because we were gonna looking at putting in a ban, but then the state did it. But at that point, the county was talking about, and we still recommend that, to clean your bags, because there could be something in there, it could be from the produce packaging.
Sure.
So I think it's a good idea to clean them.
All right, thanks, Ann.
Oh, and some stores still have plastic bags, and they can use them off the paper
Okay.
Public health
Nancy.
would rather have them on the golf course rather than in places like the CDC.
Playing golf.
That too.
Sorry.
I got all excited when we heard
Went off
that.
the agenda.
Easy,
It's
Mayor,
almost it was
easy.
almost 70 today. That clip said golf. I am now distracted.
Anyway,
Sorry.
we, just from the town of Ulysses, I've been out of town for several weeks, so I missed some of the things that have been happening locally, including the cemetery bridge information meeting. I don't know if anybody here went to it, but if you did, or you had feedback for us, I appreciate that. And, but I think we had a pretty good turnout, and there's a big copy of the draft plan is hanging on a bulletin board just inside our town hall, right outside the clerk's office. And tomorrow night's town board meeting, the town board will be taking a vote to make their intention of appointing the supervisor who will be on the agenda, so let's take that pass. And we will also be acting on, over a year ago, we got $100,000 grant from NYSERDA to put in a full heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system for the town hall that will be more like a combination heat pumps, so we'll have to make our town hall much more energy efficient. And it has gone along at a slow and steady pace, but now we actually had that bid. We have a bidder that seems responsible. We'll be voting to accept that bid, and then we will be getting underway with that long anticipated project. So we're looking forward to that. One piece of the project, this part of to get the grant, we sort of had to agree to do something more than the entire building, or as part of the building. So we're going to be installing LED lights in the building as part of it. And as we do, we're going to be completely sort of reworking some of our wiring and ducts too, because once they sort of start looking at everything, there were more parts of it that we needed to do to really sort of do over, rehab of the building. And so it'll have a lot more zones, because right now, you can be in the front of the building and be really cold and hot in the back. And so,
It's good thing they never have us here.
and
I didn't say anything. You people stop looking at me.
now the energy front, tomorrow, at the beginning of our meeting, we'll have Terry Carroll from Watkins Extension, who does their energy stuff. We'll be doing a presentation on the New York State new building code that's called stretch code, which is designed to promote more energy building standards, energy saving standards, sorry. And I know that's not sort of universally embraced, because I think it creates challenges and increased challenges for contractors and increased costs for people who are building, but we're going to learn more about it. I wanted to let you know that our new recreation director, Will Lennon, has been on the job working, getting geared up. He's been taking a close look at the budget and staffing to sort of see how we can figure out how to make sure that the programs are ready to get geared up for the summer. I know you talked over, and I know we talked with you, Big Dad, I'm not sure you were here. And,
I wasn't. I was sick last week. I'm sorry I missed him.
oh, but he'll be around, and I'm sure we're gonna need more guidance from you as we get closer and closer. But he's also been, while I was away, he was for the meet and greet tour to connect with some of our key local people who go to school who didn't get to go to the youth commission meeting last week. And I haven't had, on Thursday, I mean, a more detailed meeting to catch up with him, but I think that I've been impressed with some of the ideas he's had about, he's been doing a lot of research to make sure we can have some sort of online registration program for them using for parents. That's been a shared goal for a lot of us for a long time. So he's been digging into what the options are and what the costs related to that would be. So I think he's gearing up. When we were talking about the grants from the county, the Jacksonville Community Association, with whom we have a level of understanding of the town, they got one of the $5,000 park grants last year to get started on the bathroom, and they got sort of halfway through, which was sufficient for the first round of the grant, and they're putting together another round of grant requests to finish it up, because they got the upper part of the building built, and our highway department was able to lay a water line, but it's not yet hooked up at either the small college pipe or at the facility. So the goal this year is to figure out how to put a waste system under it, connect the water, and do that. So they'll be asking our town board to support that grant proposal, which is the beginning date. And yeah, and this COVID-19, we've been doing some internal work to do both sort of emergency planning in general, and continuity of operations planning, and how to think about informing both our employees and the wider community, perhaps by just pushing out some of these updates that we get from the county and whatnot. And just before I came here, so it was a press conference and big new innovations that would apparently borrow the flyer from Australia to tell people how to stay safe. So that's been reworked by our federal government as soon as they're able to do us. So I'm sure we'll be wanting to share that. And just as a reminder, so some people may not be paying a lot of attention to the census, it's actually the next week to the census forms will postcards will be mailed out to households, because this is, of course, the first year that online filling out of the census is going to be possible. So the first wave is to send your postcard to your website, you can have access to it, go online to it. And then if you don't do that, then you can get a form to fill out, and if you don't do that, then someone comes knocking on your door. So, but that whole important process kicks off the next week. So that's about it for us. Can I add something about the census?
Sure.
I'll say we only have about 25% of the census workers we need in this county, so if anybody can do it online and do it quickly, or help other people do it online, and also computers and the libraries. Yeah, our local libraries here, I mean, the county will have a full support system of the libraries on board.
I promise it's awesome.
Sure.
Nancy, I've been getting emails and phone calls, looking for summer rec information. So I kind of directed people to your website, but there's a line there that says summer recreation, but it doesn't say coming soon or information. And I'm just wondering if maybe there's something we, and I mean at you, if the town could just even put something up, just letting people know that the information is coming, because it's March and all of the parents are thinking summers is so close. And it got sunny the last few days and people just started freaking out. So I just wanted to let you know that we're getting massive.
We're working on sort of the content that would go on to the website, but I think you can do something that is a placeholder. And even invite people to do a link for email that says if you'd like the information when it's available, we can send it out.
Yeah, and then we could also share that when we get when we get the request, we could
Yeah.
then respond. So
Yeah, 'cause we
just a
wanna-
thought.
I figured that you'd be getting it. I know I mean, I ended up before I left on vacation in middle of February, I talked to the mom who had tracked Major down in Florida.
Yes.
Because that was her only way of finding out information in the past. And he said, no, we're doing it.
Yeah, yeah.
But I know people are desperate for information.
Yes.
And thanks for the reminder.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
One last thing. Nancy had asked, I think, on the phone call about the issue, is the county ramping up sanitizing our offices and other places that are looking to pull it? I don't know who should ask, but somebody asked that. And so we are, after that call, I called our facilities person, and we are doing that. And starting with the most public facing things like the library, the health department, and places like that. But it'll be over the course of a couple of weeks because the extra supplies are a little hard to get. And if you wanted to, I've also had a couple of questions of people asking me, is there any way we can speed things up as far as testing? Because testing is slow. We're slow. If someone needs to be tested for the virus, it's slow to get the results. And you could lobby the president and the federal government to push for automated testing. We have labs that are set up to go in your state where it would be you send it in and you get the results right then. But the federal government has it, so they have to manually go through and do each test, which is make it days instead of hours.
Anything else for Nancy? Nancy, I will say congratulations and or condolences on your pending appointment as supervisor. On the bridge, Cemetery Road Bridge, I asked Michelle for a kind of a summary email of the meeting, and one thing she mentioned was that there was some question about whether the village, as part of the construction project, may want to replace any water or sewer lines in the vicinity of the construction, whether we would be interested in allocating funds for it. And the answer is yes, probably. So it'll depend on the condition of that infrastructure. I believe, if memory serves, not that I was around when they were put in, but some of those lines at the bottom end, so on the Lake Street side of the bridge, are fairly deep. So we may just, if given the opportunity, we may just replace what is found. I won't say regardless of condition, but unless it looks really, really good, we may be interested in replacing it preemptively. And I did not reply to Michelle's email asking me that question. So that's part of the reason I'm mentioning it to you is I haven't forgotten about it. I just haven't specifically.
Okay, I'll certainly relay that. And I know that there had been, I reached out to you, and I don't know if the engineers followed up, because there are several parcels for which we need easements, one of which is owned by the village.
Right.
And so we wanted, other people are working on doing that easement language and getting approvals and stuff, but,
No, there's no issue in that. I think I replied to that email. There's no issue on our end.
okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, item number 9 are board member reports, starting with fire, CPZR, and farmers market.
Sure, so nothing to report on the fire front. I've unfortunately been unable to make a few of the most recent meetings, but we talked about lights and such for the truck last meeting, but other than that, nothing else to report. CPZR, we do have our next meeting this third Thursday, so the 19th of this month. And we will be reviewing some publicity assets for the upcoming public meeting. So we will have a second public meeting at the end of April on the 28th, which is a Tuesday at 7 p.m. at the Fire Hall. We'll start promoting that more broadly towards the end of the month when we get kind of all the social media assets and whatnot from EDR. But the intent is to review a draft of the comprehensive plan, preliminary zoning recommendations, and release a public survey that will mirror a little bit more of what I think the community might be expecting and what we saw 10 or so years ago with the last comprehensive plan. A little bit more kind of multiple choice, more pointed questions. And we're going to try and mirror those off of pieces that we heard from the first kind of survey, as well as some of the zoning recommendations and some of the other general topic areas that are going to get covered in the comp plan. So we're going to kind of bring them all together and try and make use of some of the content from the first survey, because a number of those questions were quite good, and it'd be interesting to see, 10 years later, if anything's changed there. So we'll be working with that, and EDR will put that up online as well. I think that's it for CPZR and farmers market. I think we've basically kind of covered the highlights. I don't know when you want to walk through your stuff, Jill. Is that more, I guess, maybe in the budget session towards the end? I'm not sure what you were, if you were just hanging out or if there was anything else you wanted to.
I'm just.
Okay.
It's the place to be.
Then, yeah, that's it for my department.
Questions for Ben? Okay.
Could you just say when the meeting at which?
Yeah, so
you have addressed?
April 28th, Tuesday at 7 p.m. at the Barrel. So we're trying to do a similar evening. It's still a weekday evening, but we tried for a different day. People have Thursday conflicts, they make Tuesday conflicts. Yeah, and we'll, last time around, we tried to hit all the various social media areas as well as newspapers. We'll probably reconsider another postcard to village residents and then directed emails to important folks, I think yourself, as well as board chairs and that kind of area to get people to come in.
So we can certainly, once we get your little details about it, get it in advance, we can put it out on the calendar.
Yeah, I think we did that. I think we did it last time. We appreciated that. So yeah, that's
People directly to us on that.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. It's not the content, I promise.
I've been yawning myself. It's the time change.
What is it? It's not the
Flu.
content.
It's
not
That's
clear.
reassuring.
It's
Thank
10
you.
after 7. It was a time change.
Yeah, but I've been sleeping. So.
I didn't say it was the company either.
All right, EMS, youth and stack. And should we leave youth on there? There's still a youth position.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, still are.
Liaison. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it should be. Yeah, it's those.
Right.
So the tree committee has been planning an Arbor Day event, which I think I mentioned will hopefully be the 23rd, although that is not in stone yet. And the idea at this point, again, tentatively, is to do it in collaboration with the Rotary Club and taking care of T-Burg when they do the fairgrounds planting. So it will be sort of a gigantic tree-centric event that will also incorporate our village need to have an Arbor Day celebration so that it doesn't end up in December again. Be a whole thing. Part of that is also planning tree planting sites in the village, which, well, I say part of that, but it may be part of that, it may be separate. We're not really sure. Youth Commission does have a couple of events, fundraisers, a little bonus and that kind of thing. They're coming up, but I'll remind everyone when we get close. For EMS, we have, Chris has been working on putting together a draft personnel policy. And actually, I was meaning to ask you, him and I had discussed incorporating, employee benefits and grievances and all of those details, and he didn't put them in. And I'm wondering if that's part of your plan or if those are things that we should be working on putting in there still.
Should be working on it, but I'm meeting with him tomorrow morning because he
Okay.
had some questions about, and I'm not sure what the questions are, something to do with what Joe's working on the police side, so.
All right, we'll see. So in any case, that's underway.
I'll
He's
look
done
at it
a,
tomorrow.
he's done a lot of work. It's looking really good. I mean, it's going to be 100 pages where our old policy was 5, but it includes standard operating procedures and all of those sort of EMS specific stuff. So it's looking good. Yeah, I think that's all.
Any questions for Ben?
Ben, at the youth commission meeting, which I couldn't go to, did they fix a date for the super summer sign up?
Yes. April 28th, I want to say. April 29th.
Oh, okay.
Close.
Yeah, you're lost.
Yep.
Daycare?
Yeah, 6
Sounds
to
bland.
7:30. And we will be having our regular April meeting.
Okay.
So we'll have another one between now.
Great.
Okay, DPW water sewer.
So it went pretty light. There is a Camden report in the Dropbox. If you haven't had an opportunity to read it, we did exceed our permit levels again. We have a couple of issues at the sewer plant with the electrical and water getting into places it shouldn't, that they're working on. It's a little disappointing at this point that it seems like that we're doing a lot of maintenance over and over again for a plant that should have been solid for at least 10 years as far as I was concerned. However, we have things almost every month where something's getting fixed or getting readjusted or whatever. But again, we had all the snow melt in February, which is why we went over the permitted level. I want to impress upon whatever opportunity we can to get that level, that permit level increased for the size, so that we stop getting dinged by them all the time. We want to do that, as well as continue to fight the I&I issues. And I have not heard anything from Dusty at all, and I haven't pursued it either. That's all I have.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah, so 32,000 gallons over 25, so 7,000 gallons a day. That's about right for snow melt. It's actually not a lot of water.
Problem is it's more than snow melt, because we're doing it all the time. We're doing it for rain events, we're doing it
Right.
for snow, we're doing it, it's an excuse almost every other month.
Right, well, there's water coming from somewhere.
Where does the ionized stuff stand at this point? Did we get
Okay.
results from the television?
No.
We don't have the
We
television.
haven't gotten the results from the movies that they took, that we paid for Breakdown to do, but we haven't gotten them for analysis. And MRB wants them, and I've asked for them. Some of us.
For sure.
MRB has their mapping completed, which is informative. And basically gives places to start looking. It's a little bit of a whack-a-mole. You just try here, you try there. Any other questions for Deb? Police and TACC.
A quick review of police monthly statistics reveals 286 calls for service, 4 calls for service outside the village. Nothing totally out of the ordinary to report. I will say that there was a burglary on Elm Street, which for that house, it was a nightmare, I'm sure. On Elm Street. Sorry. Relatively petty theft. Just credit cards and some cash, but they were able to get into the house via unlocked door. So just a reminder to, we're not expecting a crime spree, but we're fortunate to live in a safe village, but always a good idea to lock doors. There was also there was a spree of a BB gun or air rifle spree that you may have noticed. Took out the window of Gimme, left a pretty decent gash in their window with a long crack along the whole width of the window now. So that is on repairs. Apparently there was stuff shot up from Burg to Geneva. So somebody had a good time, I guess, but no real leads on that yet. We have some grant deadlines coming up this March, or this month, which is March, and we'll be submitting, I believe, 3 grants this month. These are all grants that I've mentioned before, so I won't rehash them. And we're going to do new hires later. Hires later. And I think that's it for police. And then there's the chamber. So I'll provide a fairly thorough update on some of the chamber issues everyone may or may not know about. The village is a chamber member, so I feel it's important to convey all this stuff. So a few weeks ago, we realized we had a financial problem. Turned out to be a compromised credit card that ran up over $2,500 worth of fraudulent charges in the month of December. And the police are investigating that fraud, looking at security cameras of the places where the fraud took place in town, mostly Wegmans, Walmart, some Tops maybe. But it all happened within a short period of time before the card was shut off by the bank. So the current books of the chamber look like this. By our math, we owe about $4,500 in bills, and we have about $1,500 as a balance. What also has come to light in just the last couple of days is that Porch Fest was using our bank account as well. They feel, based on their books, that they had $4,400 in the chamber account that should be accounted for. So if you do the math, even if that $2,500 wasn't stolen, we would not, as a chamber, been able to cover what we owed people, or we were paying people from Porch Fest money. Any way you look at it, there's something missing there. The chamber will be looking back at bank statements probably as far back as 5 years to really get a thorough idea of what were commonly charged payments, what checks were written in a more regular basis, and then looking for additional abnormalities beyond the time frame of which this credit card was compromised. So there's a lot to do there. And it's going to take a while to kind of get that bank account back to where it needs to be to reimburse a lot of people. We've met on this. We've added some new board members who were on the board previously who are really interested in taking an active role in helping us recover from this. Soon we hope to have kind of an open house style event, which we think will be a good opportunity to just invite members to Atlas and just basically have a face-to-face and tell people where we're at and kind of encourage members to come to the event, use that as a time to hopefully pay dues for the year and also potential other fundraising ideas. But to kind of have a more open Q&A. Because as bad as this all is, we do think there's an opportunity to improve the way the chamber operates coming out of it. So does anybody have any other questions on the financial status or lack thereof of the chamber? Actually, we have less than $1,000. We have about $500 now because we gave $1,000. We paid a portion of the balance owed to the Falls, which had been owed money since November for our chamber dinner. So we felt like we wanted to at least pay them some of their money, and we'll work on recouping the rest through hopefully membership dues. Once we expect in the meeting this coming Wednesday in 2 days that we will appoint a new treasurer. This is a person who's done bookkeeping for the county chamber, and we are optimistic that this person will accept the role and really play an instrumental role in figuring out how we're going to recover from this and ensuring that we have safeguards in place that doesn't allow it to happen again. So we're also reviewing our bylaws and what types of access we've allowed different members to have to the bank account in the past. I don't want to speculate on anything more other than to say, you know, my hunch is this goes beyond December. And either there's more fraudulent issues or just really, really poor money management that the board was not really privy to. So whatever it is, it's got to be corrected, and that may require us to draft new bylaws. And, you know, the county chamber's been supportive in offering guidance and support, as has the village. So we'll continue to push through it. In the realm of condolences, I've been named temporary president of the chamber to hopefully see us through this. What's that?
What were they thinking?
They were thinking nobody else wanted it,
All right, fair enough.
and they're like,
They were thinking you were very, very good.
it's like this guy has already committed himself to so much unfortunate stuff. What's one more hat to throw on him? And so that's where we're at. And my plan is to just try to get through this investigation. And, you know, clearly I have a relationship with the department and can help in that way. So once we emerge from that, definitely very, very interested and excited to hand it back to a local member of the business community. One thing I've started to talk to them and some of our local neighborhood volunteers about, and this is kind of hopefully in the good news of what the chamber will be working on in the near future, is to, I reached out to Alan Vogel and some others about the idea of doing getting volunteers together to build hopefully rather small ramps that will help make all of our Main Street storefronts wheelchair accessible, because a number of them, I was kind of going up and down Main Street looking at the different entryways, and most have some sort of a step or two or incline, and we should probably rectify that.
Are there any that are accessible? I guess, like,
Gimme.
That side is a little bit better.
Gimme, yeah, like the bookstore and the optical, I think don't have any step ups, but like, you know, New York Pizza has a pretty dramatic might be the wrong word, but several steps. Even Main Street Market has a sizable step up. So a lot of our storefronts are, I think Rorden kind of may have elaborated on that in the past with the Main Street redesign. We have changed some things or something. I don't know what, but
It changed a lot of things.
that seems like a conversation we've had before about how that a lot of the entrances ended up being well above the sidewalk. So Alan is really into the idea. So, and I don't think it, you know, it's not huge incline. So, and there might be, my thought is there might be an opportunity to share between different businesses, and maybe not every business needs their own, but then I don't know, where you store them outside and just hope no one steals them. They might, I don't know, but it's an initiative an initiative that people seem interested to take on.
Double as a skate park.
Well, we want to revisit that.
See, everything really does come back around, doesn't it?
Eventually come full circle.
And I think that's it for me.
I've
So
got
any
a
other
question
questions?
On the
Yeah.
chamber side, if there's community members who might be interested in trying to help out the chamber, this might be an opportune time for a donation or something. Is that something that the chamber has a mechanism for? Do you know how that process
Yeah,
works?
yeah. I mean, we have received donations in the past, and it's basically just writing a check to the Trumansburg Area Chamber of Commerce. Goes towards our expenses. We will probably put feelers out and again make this event some sort of a fundraiser, but we don't want to be asking for anything until we have a new treasurer on board to make sure they get settled and understand. We don't want money flooding in and then have no one there to really receive it. So we just want to be responsible about when we start going after money, that it's in good hands when it gets here. Because I'm not touching it. That's one of the firewalls we're going to restore. I think in previous years, the president of the chamber has not really had bank account access. And so I think that's something that should be the treasurer's, and that's the treasurer's role, is to interact with the bank. And so that will be one recommended change, I think, that we'll make on that front. Anything else?
I'm sure there are many very qualified folks who can opine on this as well, but if the chamber board does need or does want another set of eyes to potentially make suggestions on firewalls and fiduciary duties, then I may know a guy.
What's that guy's rate?
For the chamber, we'll negotiate. Anything else for Keith? Okay, treasurer.
The month of February and March is all about budgets. With, this year, I actually got to sit down with a lot of the department heads to go over things, with Joe, just another year, because this is his first real year knowing. So, Gordon and I have worked on the budget, changed some things. And I don't know if you want to talk about it during the working session, but all the health insurance things have been changed. There is one more to do, that just kind of came about this evening, but, there is a couple more, but there's one definite one. So anyway, the budget is still working. I finally completed Ben's NICEAG project.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. We had a meeting with Terry Carroll on Thursday. I
Yeah.
don't really,
We have to name an award after that guy at this pace. I mean, geez, how much
The
work does he
meeting
do
is
for
mostly to
municipalities?
get additional sign-ins or share a sign-in or something, and kind of get me up to speed on what's going on, and so I can start taking a look and figuring out what's the best way to kind of have some sort of annual report to share to both the community, and if there's anything useful to share with EDR regarding the comprehensive plan. They've got a couple pieces in there around energy use and what it's looked like over the past so many years, so something we can focus on it for action.
we have
going forward.
about 3 years worth of information.
That's
It
fine,
goes
yeah.
back to 16, 17 in that area. I sat with Jill today about the farmer's market, so, in the budget and what they were doing and that kind of stuff. Summer rec. I know I wrote that down for a reason.
Receipts?
No, I know I have to get the check to, I'll close out the account as soon as possible, I'll get that check to you, okay? Yeah,
But I think we sent, did you send the check for the deficit?
Yes, yep, and I apologize, I've just been caught up with the budget, so I will definitely do that check. The only thing I really have for the I mean, the board is, I was, discussed this with Gordon, I've been trying to plan the 3 weeks that I'm gone. Not gone in 3 weeks. I sat
Where are you
down,
going?
I'm going to have my hip replaced.
Oh, I thought it was.
Not really going to my bedroom, the chair.
You already did Italy.
Huh?
You already did Italy?
Yeah.
Did you do Italy?
I did.
Oh, sorry, I'm
Right.
lost.
Thanks for asking.
I was gonna say, like, maybe not the best time to go to Italy, but I was, I forgot she's already been there.
Anyway,
All right,
Be in a
sorry.
bedroom for 2 weeks anyway.
I'm trying to get everything in order
That's right.
for when I am out in April and May. I started, what's her name? Morgan is going to be doing the invoices. I couldn't think. She's, she's kind of up, she's doing the invoices right now. So at least they'll be done. If I can't come back to the board meeting in May, you'll have invoices to approve. The thing that I wanted to ask the board is, as far as the bank, because I'm going to be out like the first week in May, and that's water payment time, I'd like permission from the board for Tammy and I and Morgan to sign the night drop agreement. To drop, because
It's silly.
you cannot drop off or pick up the bags without the permission, and there's no place for the mayor's side. I can sign it because I
Can't
can
give
sign
me
it.
money without signing.
Can't drop it off the drop box unless I'm on the, I signed the permissions.
So I would like permission.
I made
That's
that.
the night drop,
It's
Yeah.
night drop, yes.
but you could take checks through the day.
No, that's why we have to have the night drop. Originally I called Christina and asked her if I could just have Morgan bring down the deposits and either leave them or, wait for them to be done. And she said, oh, yeah. And then she called me back and said, they changed the policy about a year ago, and unless you're on the account, you cannot do that.
Right, but I could drop them off during the day.
You can because you're an account signer.
So you don't actually need to drop them off at night.
Well, unless you want to come up and do that. I mean, I was trying to alleviate you being involved, for lack of a better word.
I
So
had
Morgan would take it there at
15
night
years
and
I've
put it
had
in the
that.
drop box, and then
And done
she would
deposits.
pick
I've
it
never
up.
had a problem.
pick up the bag the next day.
Well, by then, with deputy mayor, whoever that deputy mayor is will
They're
have,
also drop.
have. the
Well, I understand that. I was
signature to
just
do it.
trying to not,
So let me ask this, because I didn't think about this when we were talking about it earlier, because I still think it's kind of weird, but,
it is.
okay, so let's say we have 5 bags.
Mhm.
And for 5 days, we drop them, and then Worden goes in on Friday and picks them up and brings them back to us on Monday. I mean, nobody's gonna know who drops off the money into the night deposit. box.
Well, if Warden's not on the night drop agreement, because I believe you have to sign for those bags.
We
So-
don't need a night drop. Just, you lost me at night drop about 3 minutes ago.
Okay, you put them in the little slot at night.
We don't need a night drop.
So you don't want to do that. You want to be,
I
you
don't
want to,
see any reason in the 21st century we need a night drop. Someone will drop it off during the day.
but it has to be somebody who's a signer.
Understood.
Okay, I'm, okay. I was just trying to,
See you later,
Help.
since this conversation might take another hour.
No, it's not.
Okay, and that's fine, that's fine with me too.
Unless the board wants a night drop.
I was.
Can we do a night drop during the
Something else
day?
To me, I mean.
Yes, you can drop it off during the day. It goes in the little slot with the lock.
Okay, next.
Okay,
So a day night drop is what we're talking about.
I think Ann's right.
Night drop.
Kind of like non-drowsy night club. This just doesn't make sense.
just trying to cover my
Oh,
bases.
just having fun.
Well,
We
that's,
don't wanna touch the
And
hand.
I can appreciate that.
Okay, and
In
if
these
anybody
times.
can think of anything else that needs to be addressed, that they think needs to be addressed or taken care of, or somebody assigned to, please let me know. I really tried to think of as much as I can. You'll have the final budget by the night of the meeting. Well,
well
the-
before that, because we have to
Yes.
notice it.
you know,
You're a good
but that's
sport.
all I have.
Any questions for Vicky?
I think we're good.
Are we usually when I drop?
I'm just gonna keep biting my tongue.
I tried, I give up.
Clerk, welcome back.
Thanks, it's great to be back. I don't really have a report because out of the last 3 weeks, I haven't been here 2 of them, so yay me. I'm getting ready to re-levy. That's good news. You know how much the re-levy is. The notices are getting ready to go out. Right now, we're just under $60,000 of inside village bills that are over.
16?
60.
Oh,
Wow, that's high, isn't it?
Well, I'll send out the notices and lots of them will pay.
That's
But
like
it's-
3
It's
times more
3
than
times,
normal.
yes, it is.
That's a
And
lot.
And honestly, I just kind of glanced at it today
It's only
because
6.5% of the levy, so it's not terrible.
Well, it's usually,
It's
between
huge.
19 and 22, 23. I mean, 23, I think is the highest I've seen it. It says 60 is,
well, when we re-levy, it's definitely down to that. I generally run just kind of like a pre-calculating report, and it usually runs, I would say, somewhere between 35 and 40. I've never seen it this high. But again, we had a situation, I think it was the November bills, right, Vicki?
Mhm.
The November bills, I have never, and we have people who have never been late, that were late.
Right.
And they keep saying that their bills aren't getting to them. And I'm starting to
believe me.
not question that as much as I have in the past, because I believe that that's the case. I think we send 832 bills out in the mail, but I don't know where they go. So other than that, I think I returned all my calls today. I think I've gotten back to all of you that did email me about something, unless you copied Morgan, and then she took very good care of you while I was gone. So unless anybody's got any specific questions.
If someone, and I'm not sure how they would, but thought they didn't see their bill or something, they could contact you.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we can email them, we can mail them new ones. It was, and I think part of it honestly was Thanksgiving was really late this year, right? Like Black Friday was like the 29th. So the bill was due Thanksgiving weekend, the last day of the month. And I think maybe part of it is it just is at that busy time and people are leaving town or whatever. But I don't remember having a quarter that I had so many people not have their bills.
Unless it
So-
was in a letter. That's the one time we saw that it didn't,
Yes.
that people didn't pay their bill.
Yes.
So they took that bill and put it in a letter. And then people just did,
And then
they read
just
the
threw
letter and
envelope
they
out.
threw the
Right.
thing out.
Yes. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention and let you know that that's going on. Also, Board of Elections is all set with us for Monday and Thursday of next week. And we should be good.
Good.
I got nothing.
Any questions for Tammy? Okay. In the Dropbox, you have item 9.G.I, which is the Health Consortium Municipal Cooperative Agreement, which I sent to everyone for review. If there are any comments, now is the time. Otherwise, I will be responding to the consortium that the village does not have any comments on the new draft, which we will be asked to sign. Good night, Joe. We will be asked to sign mid-year so that it can be adopted and take effect on January 2021. Any comments, questions, curiosities? It's quite the legal document.
I started looking at the new ones. So, I mean, we go as far as Horseheads.
Yeah.
And
44 or 45 municipalities now in the 7 counties. We have received interest from several municipalities outside of the 6 contiguous counties, and we haven't figured out what we're going to do with it. One of the changes in this, somewhere in here, is it changes the requirement that the municipality be in either Tompkins or one of the 6 contiguous counties, and allows for, and an outside municipality if the board chooses to make an exception. So that'll be interesting. There are 135, I think, municipalities eligible just in the 7 counties. So we're only in a third of them. With probably 8 to 10 more coming in this year, or at the end of this year.
Is that just because they don't know you're doing it? And they
No,
don't
they don't.
Got into
understand
my
it?
phone.
No, they don't. They all know. They all know very
Still
well.
won't let me.
There are a couple of, there are some very small municipalities with 1 employee that won't save any money. And there are some larger municipalities that historically have used insurance brokers, Seneca County being one who finally got rid of theirs, who use insurance brokers who have insisted that either the health consortium is not in good financial shape or the health insurance is not real health insurance, stuff.
Right.
So it takes a while for
Their bread and butter.
takes a while, after multiple years of 9% increases when we're going up 4 and 5, they finally say. Unions
Unions fight it,
haven't
or-
been an issue, really. I mean, Ithaca, City of Ithaca being the exception.
Well, and I think some municipalities, like when we go away to fall training, they don't understand that self-insured doesn't mean that the municipality is insuring itself, right? They don't understand. I've tried to explain it. There's a couple of not small, but our size in Cortland County that just can't wrap their minds around it.
Yes.
Because I have tried that. Because it's one of the things everybody screams about when it falls for training is the cost of health insurance.
Any other questions?
What was the document you sent around like a month or so ago that had the comments included? Was that a different year's draft or comments?
So that was this year's draft in Word doc.
Oh,
What's in the Dropbox is public, so it's PDF. So if there's nothing else, then I will indicate that the village does not have any comments or objections to the draft changes. We had 1 applicant for our full-time code and zoning officer position, who is our current code officer. And so I would like to recommend that we hire him for the full-time code and zoning officer position, effective April 1st. That gives, I believe the town posted the position today.
I thought that was happening.
Hasn't happened yet.
It didn't happen because I thought I saw something come through my email today.
Okay, today, yeah, I had thought that was gonna happen.
Oh.
week ago.
I thought I
Okay, I think it's up now.
Okay, great.
I thought I had just posted today.
Yeah.
And yeah, I asked Tom, and he's certainly willing to be flexible if there's a lag, but so that he is able to do more here beginning April. That's why we picked the April 1 date. And so I would entertain a motion to hire Tom Myers as our full-time code and zoning officer, effective April 1st at his current pay rate.
So moved.
Second.
Any additional discussion?
just to say that whatever flexibility is required to make the transition work, we should obviously give room for it.
Yeah, I agree. I will have more on a possible fire inspector at our April meeting. Any other comments on the full-time code zoning officer? Hearing none, then all in favor of hiring Tom Myers as the full-time code and zoning officer, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? My last thing under my report, I don't think we've ever done this. But first time for everything. As this is Deb's last meeting with us.
This is not on the agenda.
Can I do a dance?
You can certainly do a dance. Probably wait till after the budget section is done. I would like to, first of all, thanks, Deb, for all the,
Thank
all the years and all that you've done, but I would actually like to,
Yeah.
you got the Phoenix right next to you.
Got 'em. I can't.
I would actually like to read into the record a resolution that I would like to move in short order. It's a resolution of appreciation to Deborah Watkins for outstanding service to the village of Trumansburg. Whereas trustee Deborah Watkins first began her service on the village of Trumansburg Board of Trustees in April 2010, and whereas trustee Watkins' service on the village board ends on April 1st, 2020. And whereas in her time on the village board, trustee Watkins has served as board commissioner of the Village Department of Public Works, the Village Water Department, the Village Sewer Department, and as deputy mayor. And whereas as board commissioner of the Village Water Department, trustee Watkins implemented, oversaw, and followed through to completion the expansion of the village's water system, which delivered a long sought after and long required second water source for the village. And whereas as board commissioner of the Village Sewer Department, trustee Watkins implemented, oversaw, and followed through to completion the renovation and modernization of the village's 40-year-old wastewater treatment plant. And whereas throughout her tenure, trustee Watkins has worked diligently and conscientiously on behalf of her fellow village residents. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village of Trumansburg Board of Trustees formally recognizes the dedication and hard work of trustee Watkins over the past decade. And be it further resolved that the Village of Trumansburg is forever grateful to trustee Watkins for her commitment to and efforts on behalf of the village. And I would so move.
That was the Benz, right?
Yeah. I don't know if anyone has anything.
It's like a mutual sort of a.
I like it.
Ben Square.
I used to have-
Does it come with a Benz?
Yes, which one would you buy?
The Benz.
Boys?
E&Z, I think she was looking for that kind of Benz. I
Oh,
don't know.
that Benz.
I don't know if anyone has anything they'd like to add before we vote.
Well, I would just say, I haven't been on this board very long compared to many of you that have been working around the village, but some of you are really long time. But people literally, spoken with several people in the street, talking about the board, and they're like, I don't know how you guys are going to replace Debbie. So there's definitely a sentiment out there that in these times, it's always sometimes easy to forget. I think that there are many, many people out there that do have an appreciation for the work that someone like yourself has done over the years. And those projects mentioned that were no small projects and probably as important of any project you can have at a municipality. So thank you for that. And please know you are really appreciated around the streets of Trumansburg.
Thank you very much.
Well, then without further ado, I'd like to call for a vote on this resolution. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Not even gonna ask if anyone's opposed. There you go, Deb.
Thanks so much.
I do.
And what I really appreciate is that. Thank you. I really appreciate that you didn't name the sewer plant after me.
Oh, that's
There's still
before you're
time.
done, yeah.
Still works. There's still
Because
time.
you're really not done, so I looked at the calendar. She's not really done until the 5th of April because the new board doesn't take their seat till the first Monday of the month, which makes it the 6th.
Thank you very much.
So I'm
everybody.
calling
I
you
do
on the 5th
appreciate
with
it.
something big.
Thanks, Vern.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank
Very
you.
nice.
Okay, item number 10 is old business. I believe we have an LED streetlight update.
Yeah, not a huge update. Ben and I were on a call 3 weeks ago now, something like that. And we haven't really conferred on it, but I think I went to a meeting in July where Nancy might have more to add too. I don't know if you were on that call, Nancy, but I went to a meeting in Cayuga Heights in July, and they wanted to get everything going come February, and now we're in March. So I think things aren't as probably you could anticipate things aren't quite on schedule as much as desired. What I understand is they now have everything they need from us, and our next step would be to actually go through with the purchase of our lights, actually exercise that offer from NICEAG. My concern there is, and I think this came up on the call, where some people have done that, and now they're just kind of waiting for the installation to get going, and we're not quite there yet, so they're kind of not seeing the savings that they would see with the conversion in place. And so, there were some anxious folks on the phone that were like, well, when is this going to get going? Because we've bought our lights, so I've been a little hesitant to rush into getting that purchase pushed through. And until there's a real firm sense that they're ready to go. Now they might say, well, we can't go until you've bought your lights, which is fair, but I maybe Ben can
They've
add to
made
that.
one comment to the fact that I think at this point, but we probably double check it. Basically, once we buy back our lights, they will take over the maintenance of them up until that. And then they'll convert them, and then they'll continue the maintenance. But basically, the point is that we don't buy them back, and then we're kind of out of luck if we have a light go out until they get to the LED stuff. So they'll cover us kind of starting as soon as we buy back. But I agree. I don't think there's any need to kind of rush into anything. I'm happy to kind of hang back until they say, we're really, really ready this time. It sounded like by the end of, I think, this month, March, they're going to have a report that we could start taking a look at with kind of engineering recommendations of taking the various streets, categorizing them by, residential, Main Street, how wide is the street, how far away are the lights from the street, that kind of design criteria, and then recommend different areas. Is it an intersection? Is it not? And so forth. And we kind of take a look at what they recommend, and then what we could expect from them. And if we have any strong desires one way or another, that we could, give them feedback. But I'm inclined to, assuming it looks good. It sounds like it'll be fairly straightforward. We can just kind of roll with that as well. There's a lot of talk about color of lights, and people want this, that, and the other thing, but they seem to make a compelling case for what they recommend, and that a lot of it really comes down to the shading of the light and how you kind of structure it and point it, and where the light spreads and what kind of head, or style of light you go with, rather than really the color of it. They did say too that it sounds like there's an inventory of our streetlights, and if they look like they're in poor shape, they'll recommend that we replace them as well, and that would be part of the kind of whole work. But if they're inclined to, if things look well, and in good shape, that's they don't want to needlessly kind of replace things. So I think a lot is just kind of waiting on seeing this report, which could be interesting to pore over if you have trouble falling asleep at night.
Is it NIPA that would do the maintenance? Like if we buy them, right? There was some talk of the city doing that, or is it, what is that? Who's the they in this scenario?
Yes,
That's what I'm
that's a
asking.
good question. I don't know specifically.
The city was one idea. I haven't heard that as much in the last couple meetings, but
It always felt strange.
they're promising to contract it out, and I think it's like no more than a 10-day turnaround they're promising, or something like that. And so, yeah, they went through the recommended temperature of the lights again. It was a lot of stuff that I thought they covered in July. And so, yeah, we still need to, they still need to basically propose a design plan to us, because they're doing a custom design for every municipality. And so we're not even there yet, where, they're supposed to come and basically take us through the design they have for the village. So I mean, they're continuing to work, but again, we haven't updated proposal from NICEAG, which I believe is good for 2 years, if memory serves. So we should be good there. And then assuming that this takes a good step forward within the next 2 years, hopefully, we should be able to exercise that. So I guess the news on that is, still a bit of a holding pattern, but is shortly after that call, I got up to date on a couple paperwork items that they didn't have from us that had been sent, but they didn't. So I think we've done what we can do outside of the actual purchase of the lights.
Okay, good. Item number 11 is new business. The only item I have for new business is an introduction of a local law to reestablish sewer rates. Local law will be printed, published, and made available. We are changing from quarterly billing to bi-monthly, which means every other month. Those billing months will be January, March, May, July, September, and November. Based on our budget work, which we'll get into momentarily, our water rates will be unchanged, but will now be whatever your quarterly rate is, divide by 3, multiply by 2, gets you the bi-monthly rate. And then sewer, we have to adjust our rates over the next 2 years to complete the rate adjustments we had initially indicated we would need to do when the sewer plant upgrade began. We actually made an adjustment initially to try to get ahead of the curve. And then now that we're done with the renovations, we need to complete those increases. For this next year, so from the May billing, starting with the May billing cycle of 2020, sewer rates will be $63.90 every 2 months. For inside sewer users, there are 6 outside sewer users. They will pay 1.5 times that, which is $95.85 every 2 months. And so there's a copy of the Dropbox, and we will publish it. And I would like to set our public hearing date for this for our April organizational meeting. We can notice that anytime.
Just one point, on the agenda, it says local law 5, in the Dropbox, it says local law 4. I don't know which is which, but just to make sure we're doing the right one.
It's gonna be 4.
Got it.
Anything else on proposed local law 4 of 2020? Not sure why. It's a piece of New York history. I'm not sure why sewer rates need to be adjusted by local law and water does not, but such is New York State. Item number 12 is our budget working session. We got through most of the budget last week. The most recent updates to the spreadsheet were done today. Thank you, Vicki. Adjustments have been made to the health insurance premiums as we discussed last week. We added a line for a contractual donation to the Trumansburg Chamber, as we discussed last week. And farmers market will need to be adjusted based on tonight's numbers. With the health insurance adjustments as they currently sit, we are looking at a no change, roughly a no change to the tax rate. Although not a no change to the levy. So for those keeping track at home, our total village assessment value went from 133.87 million to 144.1 million. So we've had a 7.6% increase in the assessments.
Did we take into account the tree?
We haven't talked about trees yet.
No, yeah.
Oh, okay.
The levy will be going up by about at least as it currently stands, the levy will be going up by about $70,000, which is about a 7%, a little over 7.25% increase in the levy. However, because of the assessment change, that basically is a no change to the rate. As it currently stands as well, this will be the first time since Vicky's been treasurer that we have not used fund balance to mitigate a large rate increase. So that's a good thing. And I know we need to talk about trees. What I would like though is now that we've made the decision to adjust the health insurance offering and the premiums, I need to have a conversation with DPW about whether they would like to participate in that, which includes the spousal option. I think that conversation will either be very short or it'll take a couple of weeks. There are also one or two employees who are not subject to collective bargaining, who are potentially, there may be changes to their personal situation, which would adjust our budgeting for their premiums. So with the exception of trees, which we'll talk about shortly, what I'd like, if the board is okay with it, is to settle on the outline of what we have with the with the caveat that we are likely to see some shifting in the health insurance piece. And then we'll get that done by the end of the month so that we can notice the public hearing for the budget in April. And then that final version will be sent around to the board before it's posted. And that health insurance piece, for example, if DPW did want to participate, will affect water and sewer as well because of how that's shared in those budgets.
So when is the change happening?
June 1.
Okay.
So my only comment would be the tax stabilization.
Yeah.
You had mentioned this when we went through it first, and I've been thinking about it. And when I started, we were in sort of a continued phase of drawing on that pretty regularly, and we've since sort of transitioned, and now it feels like maybe we're on the other side, maybe. At least
For the moment.
if you look at the broad strokes, that's
Right.
kind of the trend. And I'm wondering what we have as far as available fund balance, and if it might be worth taking essentially fund balance and putting it in tax stabilization so we have it long-term protected for that purpose.
I wouldn't mind doing that next year if fund balance grows. Right now, fund balance is as of the end of May of 19. Fund balance is 468,502, which is 16%. The 15 to 18 is kind of the sweet spot.
Okay. So hope the trend continues and do it again. Do it later, really.
I think it's not.
All right.
I think it's not insignificant. So I'm looking at the last 3 years. Go back to 17, 18. 45,000 that year, 108 the next year, 48 last year is what we used out of fund balance. So I think it's not insignificant that we're not using fund balance this year.
It's very significant. I mean, I think it was even more than that. My first year, it was like 120 or something. I want to say. I mean,
That's because we had so much in it, we had to get rid of it.
yeah. All right.
Then because there's a percentage they start
Yeah, what was that?
dinging you for.
20% the comptroller starts to get nervous or starts to try to make us nervous. So
Well, yeah,
trees.
I mean, that suits me fine. I just wanted to bring it up. So trees, I sent out this email, but I did want to talk about it in public because I think it's obviously important to do that. The one thing is I would say I did attach with the email a sort of brief inventory of the trees we've done, and I've discussed this with some of you individually. I'd rather not send that out publicly, I think. Just generally, I don't want people to worry about, like, you go about around or something like that on the street, dodge someone's trees or something. I'd be reconsidering that if people have different things, but at this point, it's pretty rough work, so I don't want anyone to worry without any real reason to do so. In any case, as I said in the email, one approach to trees that we have taken as a village generally is to let homeowners do it. What we haven't done is been sort of aggressive about that. So when there's threats to sidewalks, threats to the road, we haven't proactively required homeowners to take out those trees. At this point, we have several trees in the village that are what I would call and what the committee would call high-risk trees that I think should be dealt with. So the question is, do we proactively require homeowners to take out those trees, or do we as a village take that on?
Are they in the right of way?
These are all in the right of way, yes. So there are more. If we go further, I think you and I were walking down Main Street and I pointed out a tree that does threaten the sidewalk, but isn't in the right of way. So this inventory doesn't even include things like that. There are, if we look deeper, there's more to find. So those are the sort of extreme options would be either take everything on or have homeowners do it and be, fairly concrete about our requirements in that regard. I talked with Deb and the committee, and we tended to think that the idea would be to encourage as much as we could homeowners to do it themselves, but take maybe a carrot and a stick approach rather than just make a requirement, but to provide some funding if homeowners did what we want, which is to grind the stumps, replace the trees,
Replant.
and take out the trees. So it would cover, if we put $1,000 per tree, we have between 6 and 8 trees that are considered high risk in the village. And I say between 6 and 8 because it depends on, Asplund has been sort of slated or tasked with taking down a couple. They have proven to be sort of unreliable. So I'm assuming that they'll get 1 out of 2. But if we allot $1,000 per tree, require homeowners to take it down within the calendar year or within some certain amount of time, and also to do the replanting and stump grinding, then $1,000 would cover maybe half, maybe a little bit more than half. Dusty has also expressed willingness to help out a little bit. So depending on what he can do, we could be covering the majority of the expense. So that is what I would like to do. I think that's the best route to take. It splits the difference between just throwing this on people. And certainly I don't want to take it over as a village program. That's why it's only very narrowly focused. It's only these very specific trees on this list that are high risk. We're not taking on active management of all street trees or anything along those lines, nor would we be pretending to or anything like that. So to me, this is the logical approach. I also do want to say, I apologize for not bringing this up later. Deb and I had talked about it a long ago, and then I just didn't get this far. So sorry for that.
Remind me, the street tree law, if the village takes a tree down in the right of way, does the village have the right to replace? Or does the property owner have to approve?
We did not establish in the law a right to replace, but we would be able to. I mean, outside of the law and the right of way, you can plant trees. But we didn't name that explicitly in the law.
Interesting. Is this something that would make sense to plan on, say, 3 to 4 trees a year on an ongoing basis?
So, obviously it depends on the approach. I think that would be, if we were looking at doing this long-term, yes, we would come up with some allotment that would be the hope is that as part of that Tree City, of that whole plan, we will hopefully be getting towards a full and comprehensive inventory of the village and help planning with, a much higher price tag, but grant funded. So I don't foresee this being a long-term commitment that we take on, but we could easily spend an amount of money in the village. I mean, there are a lot of trees that are dangerous or starting to become dangerous or will become dangerous in the next 2 years.
I'm only thinking about in the right of way still. But-
Oh, no, that's what I mean. I mean, there's a lot.
I'm just thinking about the budget, and I'm also thinking about the budget impact. What if we used, we worked for a long time, what if we used the old sidewalk model? Which was, so the old sidewalk model was we put $2,000 or $3,000 a year into a sidewalk fund. And if a resident wanted to fix their sidewalk, then we would reimburse them for it.
Yeah.
So what if we had that same version where if someone has a street, first of all, we have to notify these property owners that these trees are dangerous.
Right.
And that you should plan on doing something about them, or the village will have to take action at some point, something like that.
Mhm.
Then if the property owner says, yep, I got a guy coming this year anyway to take it down, then we can reimburse some portion, not all of it. It doesn't answer the question of if they choose not to do anything, at what point does the village have to do something?
So my intention would be generally to give a window. If you don't do it within that window, we do it and bill you. Or you become obligated, or you lose access to the reimbursement. So I think it would be initially, we will help you pay for it if you do it within this calendar or budget year. If you miss that window, right, yeah, and grind the standard. So if you don't get that all done within this budget year, then you are then obligated to do it on your own. If you don't do it, within 30 days is the window that we set in the tree law. So I would say longer than that, but in any case, there would be 3 steps. So if you do it within a certain amount of time, we'll reimburse $1,000 of the cost of those 3 things. If you do it within another amount of time, you've lost that window. And if you make it all the way to the end, we'll do it for you and charge you for it.
The billing for it piece that I wonder about.
Yeah,
I thought you,
guided like that.
can't you put that in your tax
That was what we said, we're guided like that.
bill? Charges they owe to my, if they owe to charge.
Yeah, I'm okay with notifying the property owners with the very dangerous trees. I'm okay with saying, if you choose to have it done, then we'll reimburse X. And I'm okay with saying, if you don't do it by a certain date, the village may have to take it down anyway. I don't know about the billing them for it part. I can see that being problematic.
So there are things that are treated that way, right?
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, you can certainly,
I'm not questioning the legality. I'm just,
oh, yeah. Yes, it's less than ideal, but I think that's part of the reason to go for the carrot and the stick is to hopefully limit the cases where someone would go that far. $1,000 is a pretty big incentive to get them done as soon as possible. Not to mention that they are dangerous, substantially, concretely, meaningfully dangerous on these people's property. So to not do it when given the opportunity and partial funding is, there's no excuse to that, to be quite frank. Unless they
Unless
absolutely
they
just
can't
can't.
eat,
Right.
unless they can't eat.
Right,
And that's
unless they
always
absolutely
the-
can't.
That is always the part when the carrot and the stick don't work.
And to be honest with you, in that case, I would just do it personally, and it would not be an issue. So I can't imagine that scenario exists.
How do you not play favorites? How do you, and I don't mean it like favorites, but how do you decide who can afford to do it and who can't?
It would be an exceptional circumstance where I would volunteer to do my own job for someone. So if they came to me and said, we can't do this, and they were very compelling, that would not be me as a trustee or a village official or a village undertaking at all. Just
Not if it says volunteer as a citizen.
Yeah, no, that would just be me doing my job.
Ah, okay, gotcha. Not the village.
Yeah, no, unrelated to the village completely. No, so my initial thinking was that it would be tied to finances somehow, but Deb brought up exactly that point, that it would be very difficult to establish, financial well-being in any concrete or meaningful way.
And see, and that's, I don't think that it should be, I don't think that it should be based on how much the person who owns a home has. It needs to be based equitably because it is a village and not an individual.
Yeah, when we discussed it as a committee, there was a lot of different options, and Deb sort of boiled it down in a way that I think is exactly right.
And I think that pretty much that we were going down the same path as you were with the sidewalk, saying, okay, there's this money there. We notify them, they can either ask for the money or not ask for the money, but there has to be enough in there so that we have it for at least the top 7 trees this year, and maybe it takes 7 trees next year. But the whole point is to have it budgeted for so that there is that assistance.
I'll just say, I know there's a lot of details. It sounds like we're still kind of working through, but as a general concept, I like the idea that it's something I'm interested in thinking about for the sidewalks as well, going forward. Not now, obviously, but I think as a general approach towards, there are things we want to see in the village that we would rather than not be on our plate as execution, but we want to incentivize rather than just having these kind of various laws that we struggle to enforce for obvious reasons. Who's going to enforce them? Who's going to be the person checking? How do we actually enforce, so on and so forth? Kind of just leading with more of a carrot, I think makes a lot of sense. And I could see this, I mean, maybe it's just for this year, that's fine too, but I could see this continuing, like you're saying, kind of adding to a fund that could help with other trees. And if we get to a point where most of the trees are already pretty all right, then maybe it's there for planting new trees. Like there's a lot of different options we could use with a small fund that we kind of put a little bit into every year and make good use out of.
In this particular case, I believe this is a safety issue. And it's not only, it's a safety issue and it's a individual financial issue if you have to spend $2,000 to get rid of your tree. Sometimes the reason they're overgrown is because people can't budget for that.
And in this case, I think a lot of it is that.
I do
Because
too.
these are
I
not
think
like some.
the people that live there are elderly, have been there for the 60 years the tree's been growing.
See, I think the problem that I'm having with it at the moment is partly the equitability issue, but partly if the village doesn't do anything, it's the property owner's responsibility.
Right.
To some degree, except cleanup and damaged infrastructure would be our responsibility unless we tell them explicitly this tree is a problem.
Right, so the notification
Is a critical piece.
is a critical piece, which now makes it the property owner's responsibility.
Yeah.
So if we're going to say that they have to do something about it, we're probably better off just saying, we're going to do something about it. And then the village budgets for 3 to 4 trees a year. And then somewhere in there, maybe there's a way to say, what? This is where I'm stuck. If you, Mr. and Mrs. Property Owner, want to take the tree yourself, then you can determine whether you want to replant anything. Maybe I don't like that tree there. Or you get to determine what you want to plant, subject to the tree law, which says what your options are. If you choose not to, because you don't want to or you can't, then this is on the village's list to remove, and the village will determine whether to put anything back, and we likely will, and we will decide what the tree is, and if you don't like that.
Right, but then we end up responsible for that tree. It becomes,
You put the tree in, you maintain it. It's not
Yeah.
mine anymore.
right, I don't want to.
We've
And
already
we already went
established,
through this. If you remember how bad the red bud discussion was with the sidewalk, do you really want to get into those?
but we
things?
aren't we already in it when we are inventorying right-of-way trees and saying that you need to take this down at your expense, or else
But they
we're gonna bill
they
you?
are dead.
No.
I mean, or they
No,
are
there's a-
dying.
There's a huge spectrum between us and it. I mean, we're not pruning. We could be doing so much more than removing trees. If we were truly responsible for the trees in our right of way.
I understand, but the dead tree that needs to come down tomorrow, because it's a public health hazard, if the village is forced to take it down and then replaces it, or is the village not responsible for that tree that we replaced?
No, that's what I'm saying. We would be. I don't want to be. I'd rather the homeowner be responsible for maintaining that tree throughout its entire life. And only in a time of desperation would I advocate for the village taking them out at all. It's only because we waited so long to do this that I think we should be taking as strong a stance as I'm advocating for now. Generally, I would say if we're going to say homeowners should do it, then we should stick to that line consistently.
Yeah, this is the same problem we have with sidewalks. You know, we need, do what City of Ithaca does and fine people for not shoveling their sidewalks when there's 0.98 inches of snow on it.
You gotta take that measure snow. That's a drop I want.
I mean, I like the idea of doing something about truly dangerous trees in the right of way. I'm not sure how much to budget for it on an annual basis. I don't think we should do it all in 1 year. And I'm not sure.
I didn't think so either, and I don't think that $7,000 is all in 1 year. So how many trees did you say were on this list?
There's 25 or so, 30 on the sort of
Right.
the bad
So-
list, but of those, I mean,
Yeah.
it's obviously it's a spectrum.
Right. So when we came up with the 7,000, it was 7,000 for this year to get rid of the top ones that no one can assist with the top ones that we really want. And then if there are still some remaining next year, that there would be 7,000 still for that. We weren't planning on doing all 35 with the 7,000.
No, but I thought that said there were 6 to 8 that were.
Oh,
Six
yes.
to
So those are
eight
taken.
are deadly.
Yeah, those are the top rated. So that's, the risk rating for them is 10. 12 is the worst possible. So the risk rating for those top 6 to 8 is 10 or above. So they're sort of.
Well, I think, how about this? I mean, I'd like to budget 5 for it this year, but then make that a 5, plan on making that 5 on an ongoing basis. And if we run out of really dead trees in the right of way, then we'll find something else for the 5, including planting. That I understand
That would
would
be
way down the road.
favorite scenario.
But what about, since the notification is such an important piece, particularly from a liability standpoint, we notify all the property owners right away. Right away, not right away. We notify the property owners right away, inform them that this tree poses a public health hazard, et cetera, and inform them in the notification, maybe we even run it by Guy, inform them in the notification that this constitutes, the notification creates their liability.
So
And suggest that they take the tree down and that the village would reimburse half of the cost up to X. But then if we get to that tree and our plan, if whatever, August rolls around and no one's taken dangerous tree down, we have to have a plan to do it and just leave it at that. Not threaten to bill. The stick is the liability. If I don't do anything and the village doesn't get to my dangerous tree until September and a windstorm blows it over in July, that's on me, not the village.
Okay.
And then if the village does get to it, then we'll do whatever we do, but the village may only take 2 or 3 trees a year, depending on time and cost and whatever.
So one of the other big problems with this is that the DPW is not at all certified or trained to do any of this, and they have historically done it. So we asked them to stop because of obvious reasons.
Right.
So we'll have to figure out a new route in that regard. But that sounds great to me. I've been working on that letter, and I'll have to change it a little bit. That's a sort of a new tact, but I'm on board. I think the committee would agree with that approach.
We have to make sure that the DPW gets the appropriate training. They are not tree removers. They are not, they're not liable. I mean,
And
they're
it's
not
also
insured.
not in any of their job descriptions.
And
No.
even though even though they can remove what's on the ground, they shouldn't be removing a lot of trees.
Yeah, our workers can.
I think there was a chainsaw note in the
Yeah.
training line.
Right.
It's completely inadequate for the task, but
Right.
hopefully.
So is it that then that we would contract this out as the idea, or that they, or our intent is, okay,
I mean, they can't, they just, so either,
right.
historically,
But
I have done some just volunteering, but I'm not willing to take on this level of, you know, official. I've done here and there bits when it was fun and convenient and it worked out.
Well, that'll be something.
Stack will have to investigate, source,
Right.
get quotes.
I'm actually a little bit apprehensive about doing that because I know everyone, it's my industry. So I'll talk with Dusty. I'll ask him maybe to take that on so I can sort of stay away. The next question is, do we create a new line?
Yes.
Or
We'll just call it, actually, didn't we used to have a street trees?
I don't know, I was.
We
gonna-
did.
I thought,
I was gonna look up in the manual if there's a specific.
we used to have a
Budget
street,
line.
we used to have a street tree contractual, I'm almost sure.
Yeah,
we
Dave
did.
Allen was booked on it every year.
yeah, that's
When
what I
we
thought.
were,
Not in my time.
no, it was before you, Vicky. Yeah,
But I didn't know if New York State had a specific account number.
I think there is.
Yeah, that's why I was just gonna write down what you
Yeah.
wanted to put in.
And
I
would
just
this,
can't remember.
would this line then include both the carrot money as well as the stick contractor? I don't know what-
Yeah, it
for
would
lack of a better
be,
word.
basically be our allocated spending for the year.
Any grants or anything to tap into to like help us build up a fund, like a reserve?
So there are some that, I mean, the big one is one we've been chasing. There's a lot of planting grants. There's a lot of like, you know, build and diversify and education grants and that kind of thing.
Few people don't love to.
Taking trees
tear
out
down
isn't
trees.
quite as sexy and, you know, like media friendly,
Yeah.
I guess. I mean, I'm sure they're there if I find
Well, even
them.
on the planting side, I mean, we're getting 4 from Central New York Landscapers Association has awarded the village 4 trees.
I don't know, like, could this be classified as like a beautification?
It can,
Sure.
because we did that with, we did it last year with something. I can't remember what, but,
Seems like maybe if we
Yeah,
could
the
build
trees
up
can
some
be
sort of a
red, the
balance and
trees-
then stagger it
right,
little by little as we build the balance.
Mm,
we
yeah.
can maybe be in a better position to offer better reimbursements.
whatever trees we replaced last year. There's small trees somewhere. And on the hill, on the little-
So it's 5,000, I think that would do for this year to start.
I should have come in at the 10 that you wanted to, and we would have ended up at the 7.
I'd already replayed this conversation.
Okay, so then, is there anything else specific budget-wise? Any other line items anyone wants to add?
I've got a couple more. We can keep
Yeah.
going.
So then, Vicky will add the street tree contractual line for 5,000. She'll adjust the farmer's market numbers for the budget numbers we got tonight. She and I will make health insurance adjustments as needed. I would like to get the public hearing for the budget noticed the week of the 23rd. It's probably towards the end of that last full week in March. Since our April meeting is the 13th, it's a little later this year. So that gives us 2.5 weeks to make sure all of this is good. Which I think means we can cancel our scheduled meeting for the 23rd. We had a budget working session for Monday, the 23rd. Unless we feel the need for it.
Maybe keep it on the books. Never know. It's nice to get out of the house, and talk money.
Just have it at LB.
There you go.
Okay, all right.
No
I can
quorum.
support
So
that
we,
decision.
we will cancel and notice the cancellation of the meeting on the 23rd. Health insurance adjustments last week and public hearing notice.
No time like Excel time. That's a saying.
I've heard that, for sure.
Anything else budget?
Yep. And I don't know what you want to do, but I know that you talked about sewer and doing something in addition with, the rate stabilization line. I don't know if you want to,
You
To-
don't, we won't know any of that until we have the health insurance.
okay, so you're gonna wait on that. Okay, that's all,
That'll be
that's
one of
fine.
the last health insurance based adjustments.
Okay, okay. That's fine.
No, rate stabilization sewer is fixed. Sewer is done, except for health insurance. It's water.
Well, okay, they don't mail it, so I don't think.
I'll look at it after health insurance.
Okay, yeah.
Because we fixed the fees, because we're rated, that's what the sewer rent law is for.
Okay.
This is the one that change
Okay.
automatically to balance it. But you can't do that till health insurance is
Yeah.
fixed.
All right, I get it.
Anything else? Budget. Okay. Item number 13 is approval of abstracts. We have general fund abstract totaling $183,932.91.
I move that we pay this abstract.
Second. And actually I had a question.
Mhm.
Trust and agency EMS and drivers, trust and agency EMS admin. Where's Chris?
He is under EMS and drivers.
That's what I thought.
Admin is Tammy.
Is it possible to change that?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I just have to tell Morgan.
Because I would like to do that. That is,
Okay.
it would be helpful to see, because the EMS and driver's number is, yeah, that would be great.
But you want,
So let me ask a question to follow up. So how do you want all his administration salary in that line and when he drives or works the rig in the other line? Because they're paid differently.
Well, that isn't true.
that's what was,
Maybe I
my-
should
that
think
was my
about it.
question.
I mean, it's fine either way, Ben. I
Yeah,
just
no,
can't-
I get you. I just,
I think
that
it
is
should
an
be that
interesting
way,
question.
But it
'cause
should be that way.
It should be, but for his. I'm gonna have to think
Okay, get back to me.
because that's.
When you stop in to get your cookies tomorrow, we can talk about it. Okay.
Oh,
He's already forgotten about
But there's, how could you though? The other question I had is, Morgan's, grant training is on here twice.
Because,
Is
yeah.
that just two different things
Yep.
that's supposed to be a thing?
yep, she's going down there in April.
Oh, good. That's all.
Any other questions on the general fund abstract? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
it.
Any opposed? We have an EMS billing abstract of $12,625.08.
Move that we approve that. email.
Second.
Any questions, comments, or otherwise? Not, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have the water fund abstract, $52,084.83.
When would we pay that?
Second.
Any comments, questions? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sewer fund abstract, $20,187.94.
Move that we pay that amount from the sewer fund.
Second.
Any comments? Then none, all in favor, please say aye.
I,
Any opposed? And last but not least, trust and agency abstracting the amount of $41,752.12.
I move that we pay that amount to trust and agency.
Second. If there are no comments, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item number 14, Nancy, anything else you want to
Yeah, actually it was.
opine on?
I neglected to say that with, the expectation that I'm moving to the supervisor role, that means my seat will be vacant in the town board, and we are actively looking, and I wanted to, encourage you to think about people from the town, which is East Village, of course, that would be interested in becoming a town board member. We, have we're inviting people to apply, we just have a regular form that volunteers who sign up for boards use. Town board would be interviewing people, and if we have, somebody interested and qualified, and come forward in time, we'd like to be able to do that as soon as the end of March, just to be able to get. We've been in transition for a while, and we'd like to get full speed and carry on with our work plan. So I just wanted to announce it, the vagaries of the state law set the minimum qualifications of being 18 years of age and a resident of the town of Ulysses. Obviously, we're looking for people who have interest and some experience, perhaps, that contribute, and I can identify that on the application. So I wanted to do that, especially since you do have a lot of screening capability, and also just people, and truly, we do not have somebody sort of like already in our pocket. And so this is not an idle request. It really is a genuine call for trying to identify people in town who would be willing and able to serve. So.
Is this an appointment then?
Yeah, it would be, yeah, because the, both the term of the supervisor and the term of the town board seat that I fill are actually run through the end of 2021. We're halfway through a 4-year term. My appointment will just be through the end of 2020. And then we have to have a special election in this coming November to fill the remaining year of the supervisor term. That would be true also for the town board seat. So we could appoint now someone to fill a town board seat through the end of December 2020. Then that person, or there would be a nominating process for them to run in the November election to continue in 2021, and then by the fall of 2021, several, actually many seats in the town become open for election for a new 4-year term that starts in 2022. Easy enough?
No, sounds awful.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we're familiar with
we've done it.
Yeah, so that's,
off-year elections, appointments.
Well, so it sounds like it's a good opportunity for someone to, if they're interested, to try it out and then decide if they want to run in November. A few months later.
yeah. And then the other opportunities people have to get involved with the town, we actually have a planning board that has 2 alternate seats structured into the mix. Both of those are empty now because we've been plundering the planning board to get our new town board member, Caitlin Olson, and she moved off the planning board. One of the other alternates stepped into chair. Linda Little is chairing our planning board for us now. So that's another way for people to get involved. And so I'm happy to provide more information on these opportunities.
Yeah, well, I'm very, very interested to see how it goes. I think, I forget who I was talking to about it. when Don Ellis retired from public service in 2010. I think that ended a multi-decade streak of having at least one village resident on the town board. So now we're 10 years with no village representation on the town board. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any interest from anyone
Yeah,
who lives in the village to serve on that board.
yeah, I think that would be great. And once we get our full town board team together, we will be sort of revisiting, what we set up in January and our liaison assignments and whatnot, just to sort of see what stays the same and whether the person gets some different roles and whatnot. So we'll keep you posted as to that.
Great.
But thank you for letting me
Yeah.
chime in.
If there's no other, if Nancy doesn't have anything else for us, then I would entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss police personnel and pending legal issues.
So moved.
Second.
Also EMS.
Been a while.
Friendly amendment.
All in favor?
Aye.
While you're transitioning, I wanted to follow up. Jill, I did have a nice conversation